So I think it's important to let your personality shine through, because if you don't, then how are you going to stand out from other people? How are you going to show who you are and what makes you different?
Welcome in to the very first episode of She Scores, a women in sports focused podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pearson. Joining us today is Ellie French.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much. I can't believe I'm the debut guest. I'm so honored. Thank you for inviting me on.
No problem. All right. So the first question that I have for you is, I guess, start out, just kind of introduce yourself, kind of tell a little bit about what you do, kind of where you're from, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So I originally am from California. I grew up there, lived there till I was 16, and then moved to Northern Virginia, finished out high school there, graduated from high school, went to Penn State. I knew I wanted to do journalism, specifically broadcast journalism, and I knew I wanted my focus to be in sports. So when it came to applying for colleges, I just kind of searched best broadcasting schools on Google, and thought about, okay, which of these schools has really good sports teams as well. Narrowed down my options, and I just ended up at Penn State, which I loved it. 4 of the best years of my life. So many great opportunities there, just as far as journalism opportunities, classes, and of course, the opportunity to get involved with athletics. I feel like so many Big Ten schools do a great job of that as well. Just the opportunities to do the Big Ten Network student use stuff, do some of the sideline reporting, other things. So that was really fun to do in college, as well as some other clubs that sort of gave me that first taste of what it will be like. And then my first job out of school was in Meridian, Mississippi. I know everyone always talks about the market sizes. It's like market 1 is New York, and then it's up to like 200 something. Meridian, Mississippi was market 191. So I started way up there. Was there for 2 years covering lots of SEC sports, junior college sports, all that. And then from there, went to Omaha after 2 years and got to do a ton of, it was basically Nebraska football, kind of in the fall, volleyball, of course, too, Nebraska, Creighton, UNO, and then basketball, Creighton basketball, Nebraska, all that. In the spring, College World Series, winter, and then College World Series in the spring and summer and all that. So yeah, just a ton of fun. And then now I've been in Green Bay, Wisconsin for a year on a 2-year contract. And Green Bay, everyone knows the Packers are here. And that's sort of why I came here, was just the opportunity to be able to cover the NFL and cover a really historic franchise in the Packers. So it's been a lot of fun. Cover a lot of other sports too. I was at the Brewers game yesterday. They're in the wild card. So Wisconsin sports, there's a lot of opportunities to cover sports all around, including the Milwaukee sports. So that was fun. And yeah, hopefully that wasn't too long, but yeah, that's kind of my background.
No. So you covered sports, obviously, NCAA, professional. Out of all the games you have covered, what would you say is your favorite game that you have covered?
Ooh, gosh, it's so hard because all of them have been so special in different ways. I feel like for me, the first experience I had covering a game where I was like, this is awesome and I'm so happy to be in this profession was it would have been the 2019 Egg Bowl. And the Egg Bowl is Mississippi State, Ole Miss, when they play each other in football every year. It's called the Egg Bowl. And it's just such a historic game that you never know what's going to happen. I mean, both teams have gone in before, or maybe one's been ranked, the other hasn't. And then the one that's not ranked beats the ranked team. And there just always is something crazy that seems to happen in that game. And so that specific game, I remember it was Ole Miss had scored, and then the player who had scored, I believe it was Elijah Moore, celebrated and got I think it was like a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. And then Mississippi State chose to enforce it on the extra point attempt. They missed the extra point, and they needed to make that, I think, in order to tie the game, and they missed it. And there was only like a couple seconds left in the game after that. So then Mississippi State won because Ole Miss had missed the extra point. And it was just crazy turn of events where it's just like you feel like one team was in the driver's seat, going to win it. And then this happens and it just changes everything. And just the reaction and covering SEC sports is they're crazy. In Mississippi State, the cowbells are so loud. So that was the first and definitely one of my top 5 favorite events, games that I ever had to cover, just because it was so much fun.
Yeah, it's definitely really hard to narrow down. Like, I even trying to think of what the favorite game I've covered is I've done. I know I haven't been in it very long, but what would I say? I guess mine would probably be I guess would be my sophomore year. This one, I guess, was just kind of more special for me personally. When Nebraska volleyball had their spring game out in Central City,
Yep.
because that's about 15 minutes from where I grew up. And so I actually got to go home and cover the game. And so that was kind of just like a full circle moment because, in Central City, that's kind of where my volleyball career started when I was really little. That's when I started playing. And then being able to come back kind of where it all started to cover the Huskers, that was pretty cool.
You know what, Sarah, you saying that, I actually am totally changing my answer, and I can't believe I didn't think about this. I am changing my answer to Volleyball Day in Nebraska.
Oh, of
That was
course.
the coolest event ever. And that was one of the last things I got to cover when I was in Nebraska. And I'm so thankful that I didn't start my job here in Wisconsin before that event, because I look back on all the pictures and videos from it. And like, I'm even like tearing up thinking
I know,
about it.
I still cry when I think about that too.
It was just so special. And this podcast, you're talking about women in sports, and what is more powerful than having the highest attendance ever for a female sporting event be for a Nebraska volleyball match, and just the amount of people and support, not just within the stadium, but just like the a ripple effect of what it had, and just over social media and a coverage and everything, like just the support and how much of that. And it's like, it's spiraled then into, you're talking about the WNBA just growing so much more this year. But just to bring it all together, thank you for saying that, because absolutely, and I will say it going forward, it's got to be Volleyball Day in Nebraska, because that was so special, so much fun to cover. And I'm just so happy that they did that.
Yeah, I was really hoping we would talk about that at some point. I did not cover the event, but I mean, I was there as a fan, as someone who grew up wanting to be a Husker volleyball player. That was just a really cool moment.
It was awesome. It was so
Oh,
cool. Match, everything, like just such a perfect day, truthfully.
I probably cried the whole day because like I remember I got interviewed by News Channel Nebraska, and I was definitely showing a little bit of emotion.
Oh, of course. Like I said, I'm even thinking about it now, like, and you have memories pop up on your phones all the time, right? And so I remember, I don't know, like a couple months ago, I had that memory from that day pop up, and it's just like, it was such a perfect day, and I remember it so well. And I'm so thankful that I can have the opportunity to tell people that I covered that, and that I was there and got to witness history and see all the emotion and how much it meant to people, and the women and the fans, like just everyone. It was so special. So I'm glad you mentioned volleyball, because that was really, really a great day, and my favorite event I've
Yeah, I
covered.
remember the first game this year was on the 1 year anniversary, and I was like, oh, they better bring that up when we're here at the game. And I
Yeah,
remember I had a little sign that's like, 1 year ago today, we made history. Here's to more starting tonight.
absolutely. That's the thing, is just keep adding to it, right?
Natty incoming.
Yes, yes, definitely.
I guess I'll keep going here. This kind of focused on like, women in sports. And obviously, this is kind of like, I'd say a male dominated industry. Like there's not a lot of women doing this. Are there any challenges that you've faced as a woman here working in kind of a male dominated industry?
That's a great question, Sarah. And it's one I get often. I don't feel like there's any sort of specific thing in which I've run into in my career where it's made me feel like, oh, I definitely like feel like this is an obstacle for me as a woman. But I will say, I think it still holds true that as a woman in this industry, like people are definitely becoming more accepting of it, and you're seeing more. But yes, there definitely still are a lot of men in some specific roles and certain things like that. But I still feel like even as a woman, you really have to come ready and prepared. And not everyone is always going to think like, oh, she knows what she's talking about, or how could she be knowledgeable in this? Like, she didn't play football. How does she know? And, let's not forget that not every man that covers a sport necessarily played that sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I'm trying to say is, as a woman in the industry and in other industries that are male dominated, you just always have to come extra prepared, extra ready, do extra research, and just be able to prove like, no, I do know what I'm talking about, and I did do my homework, and I am asking questions that are beneficial and this and that. And I think sometimes the criticism that women can get is that they're emotional, right? But I think that there's such beauty in covering sports and adding emotion to it. And I think that's
Hmm.
where we're doing such a great job, because there are some people in the business that are very X's and O's and the stats and this and that and what happened in the game. And that's important. Obviously, you got to tell the story of what happened at that, but there's also so much more to that as well. And that is peeling back the layers of a career performance for a player, and being like, what led you to this point? Like maybe he had a rough background, or
Hmm.
like he played the game of his life after his father had just recently passed away. So peeling back those layers and finding that emotional human element to it, I feel like women do a really, really good job of that. Just because we think about that, and we sometimes we do a good job of realizing, hey, they're not just an athlete, they're a person too, and trying to find that personal element to things. And so that's why I think it's so important to have women in sports, because we recognize that, we think about it, we
Hmm.
ask more emotional questions and sort of evoke that behind the scenes story that shows people like, oh, okay, like he or she is not just an athlete, they're a person too. So I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely relate to that. Not that I want to single anybody out, but my professor is one of those X's and O's types of guys. And I know that when I'm on air, I tend to get a little like I get excited. I show my emotion. I'm like, it's fun. And he always tells me, you got to be professional. He's like, you can't get excited for the Huskers and this and that. And I'm just like, it's fun.
It's it's hard. It's definitely very hard because, for instance, like I'll be sitting in the press box covering the Packers, and it's more fun if they do well for us. Like
Mhm.
it's more fun for us if they do well. But you have to remind yourself at the end of the day, like, okay, you're covering them, and you have to cover the good and the bad, and can't always. You can be happy for their successes because you make relationships with people there, and you want them to do well. But also, you have to realize at the end of the day, like, okay, like this is the job, and I gotta just say things how it is. So it's kind of walking that fine line where it's like you can be happy and you want to show that emotion, but you just got to do it at the right time, right? So, but if sports are supposed to be fun,
Yeah.
right?
And that's something I struggle with as someone who obviously grew up in Nebraska. Like I'm a Husker fan, I'll admit it.
Mhm.
And so trying to put that aside when I'm on the air is definitely is a little difficult at times.
It's hard. That's why it's like I'm like, oh man, like I wonder how it would be if I ever covered the teams that I grew up loving. I'm like, because I was a fan first, and so it's hard for sure.
Yeah, and then another thing, when I'm not covering the games, I love to just, be in the front row of the student section going crazy. I'm sure if you've turned on BTN and seen a game, you've probably seen me right there in the front row, but that's also another thing that my professor is like. He's like, well, no one's going to take you seriously as a broadcaster if they see you as a fan. And I'm like, well, yes, when I'm working, obviously you got to stay neutral. But like when I'm not working, I feel like it's okay to have fun with it.
Oh, absolutely. You could trust me. 4 years of Penn State, I was a fan a lot of the time, and I was there cheering, face paint on, pom
Oh,
pom.
yeah.
But then, of course, when I was working, I was like, all right, you're working. You gotta,
You got
but
to
you
turn
can't.
that off.
That doesn't mean you can't sometimes give a little mini clap or a little mini fist pump if you're excited. So you just,
I did definitely do that. Like when I'm sitting there like up in the broadcast booth, all like there's like obviously the table where he was all like pump my fist under the table or
yeah,
do
just like a
the
little something.
do the little hand signals where no one can see.
Exactly.
What would you say is your favorite part about your job?
My favorite part about my job. I kind of thought about this recently. I think it's just the amount of people you get to be around and the amount of different people you get to meet is
Mhm.
probably my favorite part about the job, because my job has taken me so many different places. Like I said, Mississippi, Nebraska, Wisconsin. Like I'm like when people ask like, "Oh, like where's home? Where are you from?" It's so hard because I've lived in so many
Mhm.
different places. But I always say I like what's going to keep me in this business is the fact that I love talking to people, and I love like learning their stories and what motivates them and the things that they do. And so I would say for me, the best part of this job is just being able to talk to people, whether it's like talking to a player about like, oh my gosh, you had your first career pick six. What did you see on that play? Like, kind of walk me through that. Or like, just getting to know them. And that's a really beautiful thing about where we're currently and the opportunities that the Packers allow us is it's like we get to go in the locker room multiple times a week and you've got 40 minutes to talk to whoever you'd like to. Granted, if they're there at their locker and available and feel like talking, but it's such a great locker room. There are a lot of really quality guys in there. And so it's really fun just to be able to even go up to them and just be like, how are you doing? Like, what's new? Like, how was your off season? What'd you do? You got married. Oh my gosh, tell me about that. And just like learning more about them as people. Or, oh, like for instance, this week the Packers are playing in Los Angeles. They're playing against the Rams, and there's quite a few guys in the locker room that are from California. So I'm sure so many are so excited. And so it's like, oh, you get to go back home near California or like near LA in California, or you're gonna have a ton of fans there who's coming. So it's really fun to talk to them and meet, like get to know them a little bit more, meet new people, and just figure out like really cool stories and unique stories to tell, because that's how you figure it out is
Mhm.
by talking to them. That's how you find these really interesting stories that maybe no one knows about, and that's what separates you from just sort of that same story that everyone else is doing, right? So that's the most fun part for me is just the opportunity to talk to people, meet people, figure out their stories. Like, and I'm always now a lot more aware because I remember I had a professor in college say, like, everyone is so busy looking at the court, or they're so busy looking at the field and like what's going on right there, but no one's really looking around at the person in the stands or the person behind the scenes or who this person is. And maybe they have a story that relates to all that. And so for me, I feel like I do a better job of that now, about just like being really like aware of like, okay, who else is involved and makes this train run, and just trying to find those people that do the things that don't get recognized that are play a really big part in things. So yeah, I would say circling back to everything, that's just my favorite part is just the relationships that you make, the getting to talk to
Mhm.
people, just kind of figuring out like who they are and what drives them.
Yeah, and I also think that along with like, getting to know the players and coaches and everyone like that, I also really like getting to know like all the media members and
Yeah.
everybody that you meet in that way too.
Yes, that is another great part of it too, because you rub so many shoulders with people. And I think when I was younger, you see them and you're like, oh, like they're busy. I don't want to talk to them. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I may never get to see them again. So I'm so much more like, hi, like I'm Ellie. I work here. This is what I do. I've followed you for so long. I just wanted to introduce myself. It's so great to meet you, and try and make that connection because it's so important. A lot of people want to help each other out in this industry. And so it's really great to just make those connections and meet other media people and
Mhm.
pick their brain. Like, hey, how did you get to where you are? Like, what could I be doing differently, or am I doing things right? Like all that to try to move up or get to somewhere I want to be. So
Yeah, and that's something I know a lot of media jobs like that. It's like, 2 years and then you move on to something else. But as someone here in college, like I've already had people that I've met who I've made really close connections with, and then they've gone on and moved to another job, and it's like, oh no, now I'm not gonna see you anymore.
no, but hey, at least with technology nowadays, like FaceTiming, texting, phone calls, like it's hard. That's another hard part of the business too, is just leaving, because you like leave a piece of yourself in every place you
Mhm.
go.
Any role models that you kind of had as you've been growing through this industry, like anybody that you've looked up to?
Well, I had a fabulous mentor in Nebraska in my former sports director, Andy Kendi. He's like he's the best mentor I've had so far in this business. And I think it's fair to say that he probably will be the best that I do have, just because I was pretty green when I came into the job. I had 2 years of experience under my belt in Mississippi, but it's such a small place. And I was on my own kind of in the sports department. And I didn't really have anyone to look up to and learn from. And so going to Omaha, I just loved the opportunity.
Mhm.
The opportunities were great of the sports I got to cover, but little did I know what was going to be the best part about it was having a mentor like him to say like, how can I do this better? Or, hey, I'm struggling with what to say, writing with this. Like, do you think this is phrased well, or can you help me better? And not even him just helping me, also just like being able to watch him in action and just like see a pro at work and learn like, wow, it's like you don't have to make things so complicated. Because that's the thing I think when you're young and starting out is you want to be perfect. And when you
Mhm.
don't feel it, like you're just like, man, like I can't make it in this business. Like I'm blah, 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 blah. But it's like having a boss like him and a mentor, I could just observe him and realize like, hey, you don't have to make it as complicated as you're making it. Like it's just so simple, and trusting in yourself. Like you watch the game, you know what happened, you can talk about it, like just that belief. So he's definitely the number one for me as far as like role model, mentor, someone that I am so thankful for and will forever be thankful for. And of course, being in this business too, you're always just trying to look and watch the best of the best at the
Mhm.
national level. And naturally, as a woman, I love to see what all the other women at that level are doing. Holly Rowe is fantastic. I mean, I swear every time I turn on the TV, she's covering a WNBA game, and then she's covering a NFL game or a college football game, and then she's it's like she's all over the place. She does so much. She's like a super human. And so I love seeing her, especially since, like I said, she does do so much different stuff. It's really cool to watch her at work. And people just respect her so much. So I love that. I
Mhm.
love watching her. I think Malika Andrews is fantastic too. She does like NBA coverage for ESPN. She's young, but she's so smart. And so I love watching her. Laura Rutledge is another Holly Rowe example of like she's just all over the place. NFL, SEC, football, like she's like a super and like she's a mom too. Holly Rowe's a mom too, like and balancing that. But so many amazing men too as well. Kevin Harlan is fabulous. I mean, his voice is like so like you just turn it on and you're like, it's Kevin Harlan like doing the game. Like I feel at peace now. So he's fantastic. But yeah, I just love watching them. I love listening to them. And it's especially fun for me because going back to just like the emotional, like peeling back the layers, getting to know a person. I think sometimes people are like, what's the point of a sideline reporter? Why are sideline reporters even, why do they exist? And a lot of people say like, oh, they should just do away with them. But I'm like, I love when they chime in and they share those little tidbits that you're not going to get
Mhm.
from play by play or from the color. I mean, because they're focused on the game.
Mhm.
A sideline reporter can add that extra, like, oh, you mentioned this. Well, we actually talked with her about it this week, and blah 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 blah. Like, and so I love and think that Holly and Laura and so many women and men as well that do the sideline reporting do such a fabulous job of being able to bring that in and add to that. And it's such a grind too. Like, oh, another one I love is Jenny Taft. She's great too.
Mhm.
So she's fantastic. So just yeah, so many amazing people that I love and looked up to. Also, I look at other local people as well, maybe in some of the bigger markets like oh my gosh, Maria Martin. She's great. She's in Atlanta. She does a great job. So I just love always looking at other women and other people's work and just being like, how are they doing it? What are they
Mhm.
up to? Yeah, just kind of learning.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Holly Rowe because actually when the Iowa Nebraska women's basketball game last year, you know, she and ESPN came and covered that, and I actually got to meet her.
What was she like? She's
Oh,
probably
she was really nice. I mean, I was like I was standing down on the uh sideline, I guess, doing my trying to film my stand up, and she was just sitting there, and I was like, do I go up to her? Do I not? Like, she's kind of a big deal. And I was like, Sarah, this is your one and only chance. So I was like, hey, can I get a picture with you?
yeah, that's great. I love that you went and did that. And I think that's so important. And just go up and talk to them and just be like, how are you? How are things? Like that means so much to them for sure. So I'm glad you got to meet her. I'm so
Yeah, it was
jealous.
cool. I wish I could I wish her DMs were open because I would love to like bring her on for an episode. I was like,
Yeah.
but I
Hey,
don't know.
maybe next time you see her, right?
Maybe, I don't know if she'll ever be. I'm pretty sure the only reason ESPN was there was because Caitlin Clark was going for the record, but
No, that's great though, Sarah. I love that.
yeah. And then obviously, been talking about role models. One role model that I definitely really look up to in my time here in this industry, good friend of yours, Lauren Michelson.
She is great. I look up to her too. Like I really do. Like I tell her all the time. I'm like, she does such a great job and she's so driven and she's so organized
Mhm.
too. I'm so envious of how organized she is because I've gotten more organized, but like she is so organized. It's amazing. And you really have to be to a certain degree in this
Mhm.
business. Yeah, she's another like when I talk about like superhuman, I'm like she's a superhuman for sure, and she's so passionate too. So I love we talked last night. We talk constantly, just being like sounding boards for each other. Like,
Mhm.
hey, like what's catching up, but also at the same time, like, oh, I had a question about how have you done this before? What do you think about this? And so it's just so fun. I'm really thankful for like our paths crossing because she's great, and I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, I remember back when we were both at Channel 8, I was like, I never really thought about like the anchoring side of things before, but then like after starting there and I saw her, killing it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to try that too. So then the following semester, then I started getting to anchoring, and then still to
I
this still to this day, like just even like a couple weeks ago when we had our first show and I anchored the sports, and I said, I was like, hey, can you watch this and give me some feedback? And of course she was always 100% willing to do that. And
Oh, I love that. You got to try everything, right? Figure out what you like. I'm so glad you did that. It's awesome.
yeah, I mean, obviously the ultimate goal is I want to do play by play, but that's like really hard to get into. And I not that I'm not confident in myself, but I don't know if I'm up at that level. But so if I can't do that, anchoring would definitely be the next goal.
Hey, that's great though, because I feel like now more women are starting to get into play by play, but there's still not a whole lot. So
Hmm.
there's that opportunity to be different and try and get into that because that would be really, really cool. So I admire you for wanting to do that.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Ah!
I want to know one other question that I had. So, out of all the games you've covered, what would you say was that moment where you're like, I made it?
Oh gosh, I feel like that's a bad answer, Sarah, but like I don't know if I've had that like, oh, I made it moment yet. Um, I guess like as far as like big games that I've been able to cover that were so like everyone had their eyes glued to it. I mean, I felt really proud of being able to cover the NFL playoffs last year. That was really fun. Green Bay, they beat the Cowboys in the first round, like really beat them. And then the second round, they played my favorite team growing up, the 49ers. And so I guess if I have to pick something, that was really like my I made it moment because I think for me, like you have such a love for the teams you grew up watching and cheering for. And so that was such a fun way where it's like, oh, where I'm at currently and like my passions coming together. It was also really hard too, because again, like I want both teams to be successful. Because I really enjoy covering the Packers, but also the 49ers are my team. So I guess if I have to pick like an I made it moment, I kind of had that really special, like, wow, I'm so thankful to be here moment when I was in Santa Clara covering that game. And it was a game that really ended up kind of coming down to the wire and 49ers came away with it, but it was just such a cool experience. So I guess I'll say that. I'll say the NFL playoff game, Packers 49ers. So it was I forget which, like I said, it was the second round of the playoffs. So
I guess when I have two that really come to mind. One of them, I guess, kind of ties into kind of the whole point of this. My freshman year, we had the first ever all-female football broadcast crew for during the Nebraska spring game. And then
oh,
like BTN came and they like picked up our story and did a whole like little feature on us. So that was pretty cool.
that's awesome. I love that. I'll have to Google that and see because I missed that.
And I was just a spotter. I was like a little freshman. I didn't think this was, I was like, it's the spring game. It's not that big of a deal. I'm gonna be like shoved in a little corner in the booth. And then we went down on the field and BTN was there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually like a big deal.
You're like, this is big.
This is
Okay.
big. And then like when my uncle who lives in Florida like sends me a picture of like me on BTN, I was like, well, okay, this is actually kind of cool.
Wow. That is awesome. I love that he got to see that too. That's such a memory for that you'll have forever.
And then I guess the second one's a little bit more recent. I guess it would have been this past semester. It was my first time getting to do like play by play on BTN Plus. It was only for like a couple of innings, but one of our players, Billy Andrews, she had like tied the all-time record for career home runs, and I got to be on the call for that. So
See, that's
and then
so
like when they posted it on social media, I was like, oh, that's my voice behind that. Oh, that's pretty cool.
you're saving all those, right? Because that's so cool.
Yeah.
Saving all those memories and yeah, being able to, I mean, that's Billy was great. So
Mm-hmm.
cool moment to be able to do that. And that's the thing. Sometimes you just find yourself in those moments. Like no one ever goes into a game always thinking that this is going to have this crazy play that they're going to call. And, but it's just, you have to see how things pan out. And so sometimes it just ends up being so special like that, where you get to be a part of the call on something like a historical mark like that.
I want to know, like, obviously in sports, like sometimes the hours can get really long and real kind of a little bit stressful. How do you deal with like kind of balancing that?
Oh, yeah. The biggest thing I've learned is letting your off days be your off days. And that's not to say that I don't try to completely like tap away from work, but I would say that I'm like 90% away from work. And it's more just doing things to sort of like decompress and relax. And so I just feel like that is so important, is not feeling like, oh, my off days, I got to be locked in on work and this and doing stuff, or maybe even sometimes going into the office and doing something that I didn't get to do on my days that I was working. It's like, no, like let your off days be your off days, do things that help you to refresh. So I love going for walks. I love working out. I love getting food with friends. I love catching up with friends that aren't here, making phone calls, FaceTiming my mom, doing simple things like laundry, catching up on dishes that have piled up in my sink, shopping, just being outside again. So I think that's so important to balance, because then you go back to work and you feel recharged and you feel refreshed, versus like if you use your off days and you just still are like locked in on work mode, then you're just gonna like wear yourself out. So catching up on sleep is important. And then I think also just you know leaning on friends and family too when things happen. Like if you had a really long day at work and you're super tired, like, or maybe you just didn't feel like it was your best day at work, leaning on a friend and just being like, hey, today was kind of a rough day for me, and just talking with them. Talk to my mom like literally every single day, talk to my dad a lot too, and they're great. Like they're very supportive, and my brother as well. So I would say just like leaning on friends and family, and just really using your off days as your off days. And it's super important when you get in the business, like don't let whatever company you're working for or whatever try to change your off days often, because that's just not healthy. You have to have those consistent off days. Sometimes things change. Like for instance, I'm typically off Tuesday, Wednesday, but look, the Brewers are in the playoffs this week. Like my off days changed to Wednesday, Thursday. And I get that because that happens sometimes, but it's like, I don't want it to be a consistent thing, because I need sort of like that structure for me, and to have those back-to-back days, versus like, if they say one week, oh, you're going to be off Monday, Tuesday, and then next week you're going to be off Tuesday, Thursday. Like it's not great. So just really advocating for yourself of like needing those days to have those your off days.
Yeah, that's definitely something I struggle with a little bit because, in college I'm trying to like, get as many reps and experiences as possible. But taking a step back is because like it'll be like this was something that happened a lot last semester where like it'd be like the day before and they'd be like, oh, Sarah, we need help. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I can help, like whatever you need. And then it got to be a lot, and I was like really just overworked, and I'm just like I told myself this semester, I'm like, Sarah, you do not need to do everything, just like
Yeah. And I get that, because it is important in college, right? You want to get those experiences and you want to try to build, like, depending on what you want to do, you got to try to build your reel or just like build up your resume. And I get that, but I will say, like, it's also so important. And I'm really happy I did this more my senior year. Like, I feel like I put in a lot of work my sophomore and junior year. So that way my senior year, when it came along, I was like, you did so much. And
Mhm.
now it's time to just enjoy this last year, enjoy being a college student for one last year. Cause you're never, like, I haven't been back to state college since I graduated. And I've like, I look back on the years and I'm really thankful for everything. I had fun, but I also feel like I did a lot and learned a lot. And so, but it's so important, like, just remembering at the end of the day, like, you're in college, like, just enjoy it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that, I'm trying to do that this year and trying not to think about, the end because that I don't want to think about that. Like, because like the other day I was like, in the front row of volleyball, and I was like, before long it'll be my last time ever standing here, and I was like, I don't want to think about that. I don't
I
want to think
know it's
about that.
hard. It creeps up on you. You're like, no. So
Two more questions that I have here. Obviously, the sports industry very very competitive. How do you make yourself stand out among the rest?
that's a great question. I would say, like, just play into your strengths. That's how you stand out. And what I mean by that is, like, what sports do you feel the most passionate about and do you feel really knowledgeable about? And just really, like, being super knowledgeable in that. Like, for instance, we cover a lot of sports in local news, but I would say, like, for me, I played basketball. I feel really confident in that sport. I feel really knowledgeable in it. And so for me, like, I really pride myself on being super basketball knowledgeable. And so I try to separate myself from others by, like, just sort of playing into that and being like that person that's like, oh, like, I understand it really well and can talk about that. So I see, like, playing to your strengths in that way, but also just like letting your personality shine through on air is super important as well. Like, I say little quirky things all the time, and I don't take, like, I try not to be a robot, or I try not to be a
Mhm.
statue and just read off the teleprompter. Like, I move with my hands, I talk with my hands, like, that's what I do. And so I think it's important to, like, let your personality shine through, because if you don't, then how are you going to stand out from other people? How are you going to show who you are and what makes you different?
The one question I had here to kind of like wrap everything up. What's some advice that you would give for a young woman who is looking to break into this industry?
I want as many women as possible, and young women, to get into this industry. I want us to take over this industry. So my advice, let's see, my advice would be to get your foot in the door, take opportunities that are available, because you, that first opportunity, like, you just have to get it. You have to
Mhm.
get in, you have to do something. And so I think the biggest thing is, like, don't be afraid of that first opportunity. Don't be afraid to, if that first opportunity is away from home, or
Mhm.
it's not anywhere close to family, it's not anywhere close to friends, because you can get there eventually. You just have to get your foot in the door. You have to do something, to get your name out there, to make connections, to get yourself in front of the camera, or to get your voice on the microphone or on the radio or whatever. So I think is what everyone is looking for is just experience. And so as long as you find an opportunity in which you can do something that you would want to do,
Mhm.
like, be a sports reporter, be a play-by-play person, work at a radio station, do behind the scenes work, like, take that opportunity, if it becomes available, and just get that experience. Because from there, once you have that on your resume and you learn, like, then you can go grow from there. I mean, that's literally what my whole career has been, starting somewhere small and just trying to work my way up and try different opportunities and cover so many different things, so many different sports, and work my way from, doing a lot of just high school, junior college to now covering professional sports, which is great, and just sort of figuring that out. So I think just take that opportunity, get your foot in the door is so important, and just have confidence in yourself. Confidence, I believe, is like top three most important things you have to have in this business. And don't get me wrong, there are certain situations where I go in where I don't always feel the most confident, but I do it. I act confident and everything works out. And you have to have confidence in yourself. But I would say that a lot of the time I do have confidence in myself, and that comes from preparation and doing my homework and being ready and feeling super knowledgeable. Now I know sometimes that doesn't always happen, but a lot of the time, if there are certain, like, if there's a big interview, I am not just going to show up and wing it.
Mhm.
As I've gotten farther in my career, like, yeah, I mean, when you do interviews, questions pop up, you think about something that happens, but you, like, if there's a big interview I'm doing my homework, I'm doing my research, I'm preparing. So preparation leads to confidence a lot of the time and just feeling good about yourself. But yeah, I'd say the biggest things are take that opportunity that comes, get your foot in the door, go out and do it, and then grow from there. And then just like being confident in yourself, being confident in your abilities, not letting anyone tell you you're not, believing in yourself, and just knowing what you bring to the table.
Yeah, that confidence, that's something that I definitely struggle with, because like I feel like I'm always like comparing myself to like the person next to me, like, oh, they're way better than me. Like I'm not gonna be as good as them.
Yeah, and look, I do the same things too. Like, there's so many people you look at in this business and I'm like, wow. I'm like, they are so good. And I'm like, but look, they had to get to that point, right? Like,
Mhm.
some people just have it and that's awesome, but like there are some things I feel really confident in, and then other things I'm like, I know I need to work on that and I need to improve, and that's okay. Like, I am who I am, and I bring a lot of really great things to the table or something different from that person, and they're great at that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like what always sticks in my head is I'm like, comparison is the thief of joy. So I'm
Mhm.
like, compare yourself to others. I was like, look yourself in the mirror, be proud of what you've done, and know what you bring into the table, what you bring into this world, and the knowledge that you can provide. And just play into your strengths and be happy. And it's not every day isn't rainbows and sunshines, but like, I just think if you wake up every day and you work hard and you just believe in yourself, like, it's a lot different than waking up and feeling like I'm not good enough, or oh, this person has this job, and like, why can't I have these same opportunities? It's like, well, think about the opportunities you have in front of you
Mhm.
and take advantage of those and work hard, and then continue to network, and those opportunities will come too. It's just a matter of time.
I'm gonna go run the brick wall now.
Woo! I love it.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was everything that I had for you. Is there anything else that you would like to add to kind of like close things out, or anything else that we didn't talk about that you think would be good to add?
I would say that the big thing is don't beat yourself up too much, feeling like you're not where you want to be and you're not ready as a college student, because yeah, you're not going to be ready. You are not going to be ready until you get into this business and you learn and you grow and you have that hands-on experience, because like there's only so much that can be taught in school, and
Mhm.
you talk to people and you learn things, but like there's so much value in actually doing things. And so for me, like, I'm like petrified going into my first job. Like, I don't, like, I'm confident, I know I'll figure it out, but I'm also at the same time like, I'm so far away from family and I don't know what I'm doing, and am I doing this right, and blah 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 blah. And like, so I just think the big thing is just like knowing you're not going to have everything figured out in college or by the time you graduate with this business, because what you gain on the job and those experience is going to teach you everything. Like, everyone says that first job out of college is grad school, truthfully, in this business, because you really do learn, like, as things start making sense. Because again, they can only, your professors, people can only apply so much to you in school, but like, there's things, functions of cameras and terminology that I didn't know until I truthfully got out in the field, and I was like, oh, okay, I get what they were saying now, or like, oh, this makes sense. So I think the big thing, for you, Sarah, and anyone else that will listen to this is like, don't feel like you have to have everything figured out by the time you graduate, or even by the time you're a year into your first job. Like, you figure things out as you go. In this
Mhm.
business, you learn, you grow, and I think that's a big thing. Continue to feel like there are things for you to learn, because as soon as you think that you have it all figured out, you don't. And so I think for me, I'm like, I just want to be a sponge. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to grow. And so, yeah, I would just say, like, it's okay that you don't have everything figured out, because I didn't either when I graduated. I just am figuring it out as I go. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for reaching out. You're doing awesome. I'm here if you need anything, and anyone listening to this. If you want to get in touch with me, my Twitter, it's at Ellie French TV. Sarah DM'd me. Thank you so much. You guys can DM me if you have any questions. Like I said, DMs are open. So it's Ellie French TV on, I guess not Twitter, it's X. So yeah, if anyone wants to reach out. But thank you so much, Sarah, for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And I think this is supposed to drop Monday, I believe. I think Monday, sometime Monday is when this is supposed to drop. So stay tuned.
Perfect. I can't wait. Thanks, Sarah. I'm gonna go run through a brick wall now. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's go. I was like, I'm probably gonna go. Well, first, we have like a trailer draft that for this that is due tomorrow before class. So I'll get that done first. But then after that, I'll probably get to work on getting this first episode put together.
That sounds great. And have fun. I miss Nebraska dearly. I miss Lincoln. Have a great time this weekend for homecoming.
I will. I was hoping I would get to shoot the football game, but I didn't get a pass. So I'll just go watch.
I guess you'll just have to enjoy it as a fan.
I'll just have to enjoy a fan with my bibs and my overalls and getting there 3 hours before the doors open.
There you go. I love it. Well, I'll be cheering on the Huskers. I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. See you. Bye.
See ya. This has been She Scores. Thank you for listening. Tune in Mondays at noon to hear from more women changing the game.